They say money can't buy happiness, but I've learned it can buy something far more valuable. Freedom from the person who made you believe you were nothing. For 12 years, I sat at that kitchen table every morning, watching David drink his coffee while scrolling through his portfolio app. The numbers would dance across his screen, hundreds of thousands rising and falling with each trade, while I stirred sugar into my tea, with hands that had supposedly never touched anything more valuable than grocery money. "Morning, beautiful," he'd say, without looking up, his voice carrying that particular tone reserved for pets and small children. "Don't forget we're having dinner with the Hendersons tonight. Wear something nice, but not too nice. We don't want them thinking I'm spending money I don't have." I would nod, smile, and return to my invisible world where I existed somewhere between the furniture and the houseplants. In his mind, I was decorative, maintained, and utterly dependent. The woman who had given up her little teaching job to support his career, who needed his permission to buy a dress over $50, who apologized when the grocery bill was higher than expected. But every morning, after he left for his office, downtown, I would climb the stairs to our spare bedroom and open my laptop. The screen would illuminate with numbers that would make David's portfolio look like pocket change. Stock tickers, real estate holdings, cryptocurrency wallets, offshore accounts, a financial empire built in complete silence over 8 years of careful, methodical planning. $20 million. 20 million reasons why I never had to hear his condescending voice again. 20 million secrets hidden behind a smile that grew more strained with each passing day. The irony wasn't lost on me. While he lectured his colleagues about market volatility and investment strategies, his wife, the woman he introduced as just a homemaker, was outperforming every fund manager in the city. While he deliberated over $5,000 investments, I was acquiring properties and startups with the precision of a chess grandmaster thinking 10 moves ahead. It started innocently enough. After I quit teaching, the silence of our empty house became deafening. David would leave at 7 sharp, return at 8 exhausted, and fall asleep by 10 watching financial news. I had 12 hours every day to fill, and reading became my escape. Economics, market analysis, emerging technologies. I devoured everything with the hunger of someone who had been intellectually starved. The first investment was almost accidental, a small tech startup that caught my attention during my research, a company developing sustainable energy solutions. I used money from my old teaching savings, just $5,000, telling myself it was play money. 6 months later, that investment had tripled. Then I reinvested, and researched more, and invested again. By the second year, I had developed a system. Every morning, I would analyze markets across 3 continents. I studied patterns that others missed, identified opportunities in sectors that traditional investors overlooked. While David focused on established blue-chip stocks, I was finding the next Amazon, the next Tesla, before they became household names. The cryptocurrency boom was my golden ticket. While most people were still trying to understand what Bitcoin was, I was diversifying across 12 different digital currencies, timing entries and exits with surgical precision. When the market exploded, my portfolio exploded with it. But it wasn't just luck or timing. It was strategy, patience, and an analytical mind that had been dismissed and underutilized for too long. Every condescending comment David made only sharpened my focus. Every time he patted my head and told me not to worry about complicated financial stuff, I added another 0 to my account balance. The real estate came next. While he complained about our mortgage payments, I was acquiring rental properties in emerging neighborhoods. While he worried about our monthly budget, I was buying commercial buildings that would triple in value within 5 years. Each purchase was carefully researched, financed through shell companies, managed through property management firms that never knew my real name. I became a ghost in the financial world, present everywhere, visible nowhere. David's wife didn't exist in boardrooms or investment portfolios. But Sarah Mitchell, Sarah Chen, Sarah Williams, my various business identities, were making waves in markets from New York to Singapore. The hardest part wasn't hiding the money. It was hiding myself. Every day, I had to suppress the woman who could predict market movements with 85% accuracy and pretend to be the woman who needed help understanding our cable bill. I had to nod sympathetically when David complained about his stressful days managing other people's money, while I was managing a portfolio that dwarfed his entire firm's assets. Some nights, I would lie awake listening to him breathe beside me, wondering how long I could maintain this elaborate performance. The woman he married was gone, replaced by someone infinitely more capable and powerful. But he never noticed the transformation because he never really looked at me to begin with. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in March. David was particularly agitated about a client who had pulled their investment, reducing his quarterly commission. He stood in our kitchen, coffee growing cold in his hands, ranting about people who didn't understand long-term investment strategies. I swear, honey, sometimes I think everyone in this world has lost their minds. People making financial decisions based on emotions instead of logic. Thank God you don't have to worry about this stuff. I handle all the complicated decisions so you can focus on keeping our home beautiful. He kissed my forehead like I was a child being praised for coloring inside the lines. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Not anger. Anger was too small for what I felt. It was a crystalline clarity that cut through 8 years of pretense like a blade. David, I said quietly, we need to talk. He paused at the door, car keys jingling in his hand. Can it wait until tonight? I've got 3 client meetings today and the Henderson dinner. You know how important tonight is for my career. No, I said, my voice carrying a tone he had never heard before. It can't wait. Something in my voice made him turn around. For the first time in years, he actually looked at me. Really looked. And I saw confusion flicker across his face. The woman standing in his kitchen wasn't the same woman who had been nodding and smiling for the past decade. Sit down, I said. Honey, I really don't have time for sit down. He sat. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. His portfolio app showed his account balance, $847,000. Respectable for a man his age, built over 15 years of careful investing and client commissions. This is impressive, I said, gesturing to his phone. You've worked very hard for this. He nodded, still confused but pleased by what seemed like admiration. Now look at this. I refreshed my investment dashboard, the numbers populated across the screen like stars appearing in a darkening sky. Real estate holdings, $8.2 million. Stock portfolio, $7.8 million. Cryptocurrency, $2.1 million. Business investments, $1.4 million. Liquid assets, $900,000. David stared at the screen for a full minute without speaking. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound emerged. Finally, he managed a single word. How? The same way you built yours, I said calmly. Research, patience, and strategic thinking. The only difference is that I'm apparently better at it than you are. His face cycled through disbelief, confusion, and something that looked like fear. This isn't real. This is some kind of mistake, or a joke, or... I pulled up the bank statements, the property deeds, the business registrations. Document after document proving that the woman he had dismissed as financially incompetent had built an empire while he was teaching her to balance a checkbook. Sarah, I don't understand. Where did this money come from? How is this possible? It's possible because while you were explaining to everyone how I was just a homemaker, I was working 16-hour days building something real. While you were patting my head and handling the complicated decisions, I was making decisions you couldn't even comprehend. The color drained from his face. Why didn't you tell me? That question hung in the air between us like smoke. Why didn't I tell him? Because he never asked. Because he never wondered what I did with my days. Because he was so comfortable with his version of me that he never questioned whether it was accurate. Because you never wanted to know who I really was, I said. You wanted a wife who made you feel smart and successful and needed. You got exactly what you wanted. But we're married. This is our money. These are our assets. I closed the laptop with a soft click that sounded like a door shutting. No, David. This is my money. These are my assets. Built with my research, my strategy, my intelligence. The intelligence you've spent 12 years dismissing. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back again. Okay. I understand you're upset. Maybe I haven't always. Maybe I could have been more supportive of your interests. But we can work this out. We're a team. A team? I laughed, and the sound surprised us both. David, you've spent our entire marriage treating me like an employee. A well-compensated employee, but an employee nonetheless. You handle the important decisions. I handle the household management. You bring home the money. I spend it responsibly. You understand the complicated world of finance. I admire your expertise from a safe distance. That's not fair. I've always provided for you. Taken care of you. You've taken care of a woman who doesn't exist. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't soften them. You've been married to a fiction, David. A character I created because it was easier than fighting you every day for basic respect. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the laptop as if it might disappear if he looked hard enough. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Gone was the condescending tone, replaced by something desperate. What do you want? Do you want me to acknowledge your success? Fine. You're clearly brilliant with money. Better than I am, obviously. We can be partners now, real partners. You can help me with my clients. We can build something together. I don't want to be your partner, David. I want to be myself. And myself is not someone who needs your permission or validation or acknowledgement. So what are you saying? You want a divorce? The question I had been asking myself for months was suddenly spoken aloud, hanging between us like a bridge I could either cross or burn. I'm saying that I've spent 8 years building a life that doesn't require you. I'm saying that I've been preparing for this conversation since the day you first explained compound interest to me like I was a particularly slow child. His desperation was transforming into something uglier. You can't just leave. Half of everything we've built together is mine. This house, our investments, everything. Our investments? I pulled out a folder I had prepared months ago. Our house is paid off with my money. Our cars, purchased with my money. Our furniture, our vacations, our lifestyle for the past 5 years. All funded by investments you didn't even know existed. I slid the documents across the table. I've had lawyers review everything very carefully. The money I made is separate property. The assets I purchased are in my name only. The businesses I invested in have no connection to you whatsoever. David grabbed the papers, scanning them frantically. This can't be legal. We're married. There are laws about shared assets. There are also laws about financial disclosure. Funny thing, I disclosed everything to my attorneys. Every investment, every account, every transaction. Can you say the same? His face went pale. What do you mean? I mean that while I was building my portfolio, I was also documenting yours. The client accounts you've been skimming from. The insider trading based on information from your golf buddy at the SEC. The cryptocurrency investments you've been hiding from the IRS. The folder hit the floor as his hands began to shake. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself. Did you really think I would spend 8 years learning about financial markets without noticing when my own husband was breaking federal law? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, David sank back into his chair, all fight drained from his body. What do you want? He whispered. I want you to sign divorce papers that I'll have delivered this afternoon. I want you to move out by the end of the week. And I want you to never again underestimate a woman's intelligence." He looked up at me with eyes I barely recognized. "And if I don't?" "Then I make some phone calls to the appropriate authorities. And you spend the next 5 to 10 years learning about financial markets from a prison library." I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, where I had placed a check that morning. I slid it across the table to him. "What's this?" "Severance pay. $500,000. Enough to start over somewhere else, legally this time." David stared at the check like it might bite him. "Why?" "Because despite everything, I'm not vindictive. I'm just done." I walked toward the stairs, then paused and turned back. "For what it's worth, David, you were right about one thing. People who make financial decisions based on emotions instead of logic do lose their minds. The difference is, I never let emotions cloud my judgment. Every decision I made was logical, calculated, and strategic, including this one." The next morning, I sat at that same kitchen table, drinking tea and watching the sunrise paint our backyard in shades of gold. David's coffee cup sat in the sink, unwashed, next to divorce papers bearing his signature. My laptop was open, displaying the latest updates to my portfolio. The Asian markets had opened strong. My renewable energy investments were up 12%, and 3 of my real estate holdings had received purchase offers at 15% above market value. But for the first time in 8 years, I wasn't looking at the numbers. I was looking at myself, really seeing myself, in the reflection of the laptop screen. The woman looking back at me was someone I had almost forgotten existed. Someone with sharp eyes and confident shoulders, and a smile that wasn't performed for anyone else's benefit. My phone buzzed with a text from my attorney. "Papers filed this morning. Congratulations on your freedom." Freedom. Such a simple word for something so complex. I had been free financially for years, but I was only now free to be honest about who I had become, free to make decisions without hiding them, free to be brilliant without apologizing for it. The house felt different without David's presence, lighter somehow, as if his dismissive energy had been weighing down the very air. I walked through rooms that were now entirely mine, not because I had won them in a battle, but because I had earned them through patience, intelligence, and strategic thinking. My phone rang. An unknown number, but I recognized the area code as belonging to David's firm. "Hello? Mrs. Patterson? This is James Morrison from Morrison & Associates. I was hoping to speak with you about your investment experience." I smiled. Word was already spreading through David's professional network. The wife who was supposed to be decorative had turned out to be the most successful investor they had never met. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I'm no longer Mrs. Patterson. And my investment strategy isn't for sale." After I hung up, I opened my laptop and began researching emerging markets in Southeast Asia. There were opportunities there that most Western investors were overlooking. Opportunities that reminded me of the early days of my portfolio building. By lunch, I had identified 3 startups and a sustainable agriculture initiative that showed extraordinary promise. By dinner, I had made 4 investments totaling $2 million. By the time the sun set on my first day as a divorced woman, I had added another $50,000 to my net worth. But more importantly, I had remembered something I had forgotten during my years of pretending to be someone else. I didn't just have money. I had the mind that had earned that money. And that mind was capable of things David could never imagine. 3 months later, I was featured on the cover of Financial Weekly as one of the top 10 investors to watch. The article called me an overnight success, which made me laugh out loud in my new penthouse office overlooking the city. If they only knew that success was 12 years in the making, built one quiet morning at a time, one dismissed conversation at a time, one underestimated decision at a time. David sent me the magazine clipping with a note. I always knew you were special. I threw it away without reading it twice. Some people need recognition to feel successful. I had learned something far more valuable. I needed nothing from anyone to be exactly who I was meant to be. And who I was meant to be was worth $20 million and counting.